أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وأرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه واجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه وأدخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. Today, inshallah, we'll touch upon some of the themes from Surah Saad, that's chapter 38, the letter Saad. Now, the main theme of the surah continues the previous surahs that talk about complete submission and surrender to Allah. And this particular surah mentions that we as humans will commit mistakes. I mean, it's in our nature. Nobody's perfect. But when you commit the mistake and find out what the truth is, will you come back to Allah and surrender? Or will you insist on the mistake and have pride and have arrogance? So which one is it going to be? So this surah is stressing about the importance of when you make a mistake and realize it, you return immediately to Allah. And you do not insist on the wrong. And you submit. That's part of your submission, your complete submission to Allah. Now, the surah mentions many prophets as a positive example of situations when these good prophets, they thought they made a mistake and they returned to Allah immediately. And then it talks about the opposite example of Iblis when he let his pride and arrogance doom him and he would not submit to Allah when he was wrong. So as we look at the verses, the theme, inshallah, will get a little clearer. The surah starts, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صاد والقرآن ذي الذكر بل الذين كفروا في عزة وشقاق. Saad, by the Quran containing reminder, but those who disbelieve are in pride and dissension. So Allah is describing that these unbelievers, they have pride that they know they're wrong, but they will not admit it, and they will stay on their wrong situation. And they have dissension. They fight people that are trying to get them back to the right. So the verse is talking about Quraysh, that they knew the Prophet, they knew he was truthful, they knew that the message came from Allah, but their pride prevented them from believing in him, and actually they started fighting him. That's where the dissension is. So, and that's basically, if you look at it, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, one of the main reasons that people disbelieve is they have pride and they fight the truth. And they said in verse 8, أأنزل عليه الذكر من بيننا بل هم في شك من ذكري بل لما يذوقوا عذاب. Has the message been revealed to him out of all of us? They thought that just because they're part of the elite in Quraysh, that they are more worthy of having prophethood and the wahi, descend upon them. I mean, that's such an arrogance. Allah chooses whoever he wishes. So they thought that they were more deserving, and because of that, Abu Jahl, he was the Prophet's uncle. He knew that his nephew was truthful, but that means that the other side of the family would get more status than his side, and that's why he fought him, not because an ideological thing, but because of pride. So Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentions the example of many prophets, but three of them, they have more details in the story. And the consistent qualities of the verses, Allah describes them as abdana, our servant, and he attributed their servitude to himself. Abdana, not say abd, abdana, out of honor. So that's one quality that he mentioned, that they have complete surrender to Allah. And then the second one is awwab. Ni'ma al-abdu innahu awwab. After returning when a mistake is committed. They do not insist on a position when they see a better position elsewhere. They immediately go to it. So the first story mentioned is the story of Sayyidina Dawood alayhi salam. And Allah says in verse 17, اصبر على ما يقولون واذكر عبدنا داود ذا الأيدي إنه أواب. So Allah is describing Prophet David as Abdana, as his servant, and the quality is awab, innahu awab. He is repeatedly returns back to Allah. And the story that was mentioned, that he was praying in his mihrab, in his prayer chambers. That's usually like inside. I mean, it's some place where you don't expect people to come in. And suddenly two men scaled the wall and jumped in, and he found them right in front of him. That shook him. I mean, he was afraid that he was in prayer. You know, when you were in prayer and you're focusing and you're all calm, and then something like that happened, he was shook. And those two men said, you know, don't worry, we're not here to hurt you. This brother, not, you know, brother, but, you know, this person has 99 ewes, and I have one, and he told me to give my one ewe to put it with his 99, and he kept insisting until he overcome me with that. So Sayyidina Dawood did not wait to hear from the other person, and he rendered his verdict right away. He said, he has wronged you. لَقَدْ ظَلَمَكَ بِسُؤَالِ نَعْجَتِكَ إِلَى نِعَاجِهِ. So he has wronged you. You haven't heard, I mean, that's part of the ruling that judges understand from this verse, is before you give a ruling, you have to hear from both parties. You cannot, and plus you have to be in a state of calmness. If you're hungry, if you're angry, if you're agitated, those are not the states that you should be in when you have to judge between people. You have to be in complete calmness. So, and when he rendered that verdict, the two men disappeared. And Sayyidina Dawood knew right away that it was a test from Allah, and he failed. So, وَظَلْنَا دَاوُودُ أَنَّمَا فَتَنَّاهُ فَاسْتَغْفَرَ رَبَّهُ وَخَرَّ رَاكِعًا وَأَنَابَ. And he immediately prostrated to Allah and returned back to him. He knew he did not do the right thing, and he did not insist on his position, and he immediately prostrated to Allah. فَغَفَرْنَا لَهُ ذَلِكَ وَإِنَّ لَهُ عِنْدَنَا لَزُلْفَى وَحُسْنَ مَآبٍ. So we forgave him, and indeed for him is nearness to us and a good place to return. So that was one example. The second example was Sayyidina Sulaiman. He was busy preparing horses for jihad. He was training them and consumed with them, and they were beautiful horses, the type of horses that, you know, people that love horses, that's the type of horse that you want. They stand on three legs and they have one leg, you know, kind of arched down. It's just a beautiful stance. I mean, these were the type of horses that, you know, are a beauty to look at. And they consumed him until he missed the Asr prayer. إِذْ عُرِضَ عَلَيْهِ بِالْعَشِيِّ الصَّافِنَاتُ الْجِيَادُ. When were exhibited before him in the afternoon the poised standing racehorses. فقال إني أحببت حب الخير عن ذكر ربي حتى توارت بالحجاب. So he knew that when he missed the Asr prayer, he knew that he did something wrong. That he wasn't goofing off. I mean, he wasn't playing around. He was preparing horses for jihad. This is a amal salih. This is a good deed. But Allah says you have to have balance. You know, you should not let good work. And this is one thing that people that call to Allah, you know, they're busy, you know, with fundraising and calling people to Allah, and they miss Dhuhr and they miss Asr. No. There are certain things that you have duties to Allah that you have to upkeep, and then you have duties to others that you also have to keep. You have to strike that balance. So he realized that he did a mistake, and they said, "Rudduha alayya fatafiqa mashan bis-suqi wal-a'naq." He said, "Return them to me," and he set about rubbing their legs and necks. Now the stories from Bani Israel, they claim that he had all these horses come back and he killed all those. He cut their necks and cut their feet, which does not does not befit an honored prophet. I mean, what's the fault of these horses? I mean, these horses are for jihad. It's not your private property to go and kill them. He was, kind of easing them, because usually when you have an agitated horse, if you rub the neck and rub the feet, it calms them down. He was almost like apologizing to the horses that he worked them so hard, he worked them so hard, so Allah made them forget about Asr prayer. So he went back and tried to make up for them. But regardless, so you have between Sayyidina Dawood and Sayyidina Sulaiman two opposite stories. One, maybe Sayyidina Sulaiman was focusing so much on his worship that he rushed to give a verdict so the people would go away so he can come back to his prayer with Allah. So he was more focused on acts of worship and forgot his duties toward others. Sayyidina Sulaiman, it's the opposite. He was focused on good deeds and missed his connection with Allah, because salah is your connection with Allah. It's not something you would miss. That comes first than anything else. So Allah is almost teaching us the balance, balance between your duties to Allah, your duties to others, and good deeds, doing good deeds. Don't do one and neglect the others. Try to do all of them. And then the story comes on, the third story was the story of Sayyidina Ayyub, that he was afflicted. We don't know what this type of affliction, the stories from Bani Israel is not to be trusted. What we know is Allah tried him, and all his children died, and all the friends went away. He couldn't move, and the only person who was left was his wife to take care of him. And his wife, kept asking him, "Why don't you ask Allah to remove your affliction?" And he, his point is, he enjoyed the good living for so many years. If Allah chose that for him, who is he to object? And some of the Sahaba were like that. One of the Sahaba was, turned blind. And he was from among the Sahaba that when he calls to Allah, Allah responds. He was mustajab ad-da'wah. And people were telling him, "Why don't you ask Allah to bring your eyesight back?" He says, "This is a situation that Allah wanted for me. Who am I to question him?" I mean, that was their sensitivity and their strength of faith. I mean, there's nothing wrong. If something happens to you, you ask Allah to remove it. I mean, that's what most of us would do. But his wife kept telling him, "Why don't you ask Allah?" And he said, if I remember the story correct, he said, "If Allah cures me, I'm going to lash you 100 lashes." Then Allah cured him, and he wanted him to make up, for his wife and still keep his oath, not to break his oath. But he gave him a way out. He gave him a way out. I said, "You go take a bundle of grass, with 100 grasses, and you hit her with it once." So now you fulfill your oath. So when you make an oath to Allah, you should not break it. I mean, that's what we understand from the verses. And Allah, anyone who has trust in Allah, Allah will give you a way out. If you submit to Him. And Allah says, وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ أَهْلَهُ وَمِثْلَهُمْ مَعَهُمْ رَحْمَةً مِنَّا وَذِكْرَى لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. And Allah replaced, gave him his youth back, gave the youth to his wife, gave him more children, gave him more wealth. When you have taqwa of Allah and you rely on Him and submit to Him, He'll take care of you.
Did he make prayer or not? Did Ayub make prayer or not? Did he pray for his cure or not?
Yes, he did. He asked Allah, because all his friends left, and then his friends start saying, "Oh, see what Allah has done to him." And that's when you read the verse, وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا أَيُّوبَ إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الشَّيْطَانُ بِنُصْبٍ وَعَذَابٍ. And remember our servant Job when he called to his Lord, "Indeed, Satan has touched me with hardship and torment." And some of the tafsir of this verse is that people started saying that Allah afflicted him because he's a bad person, because Allah doesn't love him. I mean, that's what the devil was getting people to say. And it got to the point where he couldn't bear it anymore, and he asked Allah, to remove the hardship. So these are three stories of prophets that Allah tested, and they returned to Allah and submitted to Him completely. Now, the opposite example appears towards the end of the surah in verse 73 and 74, when Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala was saying that He created Adam and He ordered the angels to bow down to him. And in verse 73 and 74, فَسَجَدَ الْمَلَائِكَةَ كُلُّهُمْ أَجْمَعُونَ إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ اسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. So all the angels bowed down. Now, Iblis is not an angel. He is from jinn. But he was in the company of angels and he was worshiping Allah with them. So when the command goes out, it goes out to everyone. And so the malaika, the angels do not disobey Allah. They do exactly what Allah says. But since he was from jinn, he had the option. He's like human. They have the option to comply or not. And Allah says, except Iblis, he was arrogant and became among the disbelievers. His arrogance that he is better than this new creation, he's too high to bow to something so small in his estimation. So he did a mistake by refusing to bow down. So Allah asked him, قال يا إبليس ما منعك أن تسجد لما خلقت بيدي استكبرت أم كنت من العالين. Allah says, O Iblis, what prevented you from prostrating to that which I created with my hands? Were you arrogant then, or were you already among the haughty? So he had a chance to say, the order wasn't for the angels, it's for all of us. Okay, no, he did not. He did not try to make up for his mistake. He doubled down. He says, قال أنا خير منه خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. I'm better than he is. You created him you created me from fire, and you created him from clay. Now, even that statement is so ignorant. What's the property of fire? Fire destroys. What's the property of clay? Clay is life. When you plant with it, it's very stable. You plant in it, it's full of good. Fire is full of evil. If you try to have a fire and you don't keep your eye on it, it'll burn everything inside. So in his estimation, he wasn't even correct that fire is better than clay. But the point is, he doubled down on his mistake, and his arrogance prevented him from bowing down. And Allah told him, قال فاخرج منها فإنك رجيم وإن عليك لعنتي إلى يوم الدين. So Allah cast him out of heaven and put the curse on him that he is far away from Allah's mercy. So what does he do? He triples down. Not even doubles down, triples down. قال ربي فأنظرني إلى يوم يبعثون. Let me live until the day of judgment so I can make them all go astray. What kind of a person? Such a person that has this type of arrogance will never submit to Allah. Arrogance and submission to Allah cannot coexist in the same person. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, a person that has an atom's weight of arrogance in them will never enter heaven. Because arrogance and servitude to Allah cannot coexist in the same. They're opposites. You either are abd to Allah or abd to your whatever else that you may be abd to. So Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is warning us not to submit like the submission of the prophets. When you make a mistake, you come back to Allah. You don't insist on it. You don't, and this we see that in a husband and wife. Your wife does something or you do something, and now the husband is starts acting crazy, even though he's wrong, but he will not back down and look like his wife was right all along. This type of behavior does not befit a believer. A believer submits to the truth. Wherever the truth is, you submit to it. That's how Allah, teaches us to do, and not be like Iblis, where you become arrogant and you refuse to apologize and you refuse to admit that you did anything wrong. So we have to be with the truth. So the pride doomed Iblis for eternity. but the abd awab for the Prophet, that's what got them, the good reputation and the great reward from Allah. So the two things that that we should get from the believers is to be a servant of Allah. So Allah can describe you as abdana, our servant. You're not servant to somebody else, you're servant of Allah. Abdana, with complete surrender to His orders. And the second one is awab, that you return to Allah and and when a mistake is done, you go back to Allah and you make up for it. This is an excellent rank that we should strive for. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.